Hi, I'm Jeanette Roche. This is Forum Daily West. Here are some of the top stories we've been following. In response to Trump's auto tariffs, Carney cancels campaigning, returns to Ottawa for a meeting of the Canada-U.S. relations. Plus, Alberta Premier Danielle Smith facing more criticism for getting chummy with Americans, this time as she heads back to Florida for Ben Shapiro's podcast. And NDP MLA Kathleen Ganley stops by the BCN studios to chat about issues concerning Alberta's opposition. Thanks so much for joining us. After 4 days on the campaign trail, Liberal leader Mark Carney stopped campaigning to head to Ottawa to call a meeting of the Canada-U.S. Cabinet Committee. They met to discuss U.S. President Donald Trump's automotive tariffs. Finance Minister François-Philippe Champagne told reporters Thursday he wants workers to know, quote, "We have your back," while making sure the government builds a made-in-Canada supply chain. Trump's 25% tariffs on all automobile imports to the U.S. start next week, and the president has since threatened Canada and the European Union with even stiffer tariffs if they work together to do economic harm to America.
Last night, the President of the United States reached out to schedule a call. I appreciate this opportunity to discuss how we can protect our workers and build our economies. I will make clear to the President that those interests are best served by cooperation and mutual respect, including of our sovereignty. We will fight the U.S. tariffs with retaliatory trade actions of our own that will have maximum impact in the United States and minimum impacts here in Canada. We will protect our workers and our industries during this difficult period. But above all, we will build a new Canadian economy. We will build Canada strong.
Ontario Premier Doug Ford says he's going to, quote, inflict pain on Americans after Donald Trump announced his move to impose 25% tariffs on automobile imports into the country.
We're going to make sure that we inflict as much pain as possible to the American people without inflicting pain on the Canadian population. And that's the reason we've done 2 rounds of $30 billion and $30 billion. And the last $65 billion, it will hurt. I'll be very, very frank, but I've talked to a tremendous amount of people going to events, and I'm very transparent by saying we have 2 options here. We either roll over as a country, and he runs us over 15 times and gets what he wants, or we feel a little bit of pain, and we fight like we've never fought before.
As U.S. tariffs make their mark on Canada's economy, provinces are now counting the costs of interprovincial trade barriers. Trevor Tombe, economics professor at the University of Calgary and director of fiscal and economic policy with the School of Public Policy, says billions of dollars could be added to our economy if trade barriers between provinces were removed.
Roughly speaking, the internal trade costs add somewhere between 5 to 15%. To prices. And so think about that as multiples of the GST, but it's hidden and embedded within the price of the items that we purchase. And the economic benefits of eliminating these barriers can also be quite substantial, potentially as high as 8% added to the overall productivity of the Canadian economy. And so that's quite a bit. 8% might sound small, but that's 8% of a $3.1 trillion economy. And so what we're really talking about here is potentially $250 billion per year in economic activity if we were to have fully liberalized interprovincial trade in Canada.
Well, DNA testing from 23andMe has filed for Chapter 11 bankruptcy protection in the United States. Privacy watchdogs are urging users of the popular service to delete their genetic data from the site as the company looks to sell its DNA database. However, according to Sharon Polsky with the Privacy and Access Council of Canada, even if you can delete your data, she says you should expect your information will still go to another company.
It's probably not just 23andMe holding company and its assets, which of course the assets include the DNA samples from however many millions of people. They also have a telehealth division Lemonade, which is prescription information, it's health information. They have business agreements with pharmaceutical companies.
Alberta Premier Danielle Smith was in Florida once again today and once again faced criticism for it. This time it's to pay a visit to right-wing podcaster Ben Shapiro and go on his show. She says she's doing this to appeal to a Republican audience to see if they can help convince President Trump to be more lenient on the tariffs. Smith told the legislature Wednesday that she is being unjustly criticized for heading south to try to diffuse an escalating trade war.
They want this lady and Alberta to just sit down and shut up. Well, here's my response to that. I will not be silent. Alberta will not be silent. We will not be pushed around and called traitors for merely having the courage to actually do something about our nation's and province's predicament other than merely indulging in self-righteous tantrums. And I, for one, will never be silenced by the party in Ottawa that has sold out our beloved province for the last 10 years with the help of their NDP collaborators. I have and I always will put Albertans first. And until this danger to Alberta and our economy is passed, they're going to have to roll me off in a stretcher before I will stop fighting for our province and our people. So they can call me and my caucus, whatever name in the dictionary they want. As long as Albertans know that we are fighting for them and their families, we could care less what the members opposite or Liberal politicians in Ottawa have to say about us, because Albertans expect their Premier and government to always put Albertans first and lead them through this storm with fearless determination. Our government's advocacy has made a massive difference for Albertans and for Canadians, and that is a fact. But now we have another tariff deadline looming on April the 2nd. And I am now off to the U.S. yet again to try and speak to Americans, this time through the second largest podcaster in the world, whose audience is made up of exactly the people we need to persuade to convince their president to change course on tariffs against Canada. And what does Team Carney want me to do? They want me to abandon my post, remain in Alberta, and do absolutely nothing to defend our province.
Smith's criticizers from Alberta's opposition and beyond say she is being far too chummy with far-right influencers who wish to do Canada harm. For his part, Ben Shapiro is criticized by the left for mocking Canada as a silly country and has amused it could become the 51st state. But according to Smith, he has a wide circle of influence that could help change the minds of Trump administration officials on tariffs. Smith also plans to attend a fundraiser with Shapiro while in Florida. NDP MLA for Calgary Mountain View, Kathleen Ganley, was in Lethbridge and stopped by our studios today to sit down with Naveen Day. They discussed a number of topics, including her thoughts on Smith's Florida visit.
Let's talk more about Premier Smith's trips to the States. She's going on Ben Shapiro's show, so let me hear your thoughts on that.
Well, my thoughts are, so she's not even going on his show. She's going to participate in a fundraiser for him. So, her claim is that she's going down there, to somehow advocate for Alberta, but that's not what she's doing at all. She's going down there to help a right-wing extremist, a known racist, someone who has said that our country, our whole country of Canada, should be annexed and should become essentially a colony of the United States. She's going down to help him fundraise. So that's really, really troubling. And she's spending taxpayer money to do that. I don't think that the average Albertan would agree with that.
You can catch more of that interview on our Friday evening newscast. In other news, Winnipeg police confirmed Ashley Shingoose, a 30-year-old from St. Teresa Point, Anisininu Nation, was the fourth victim of convicted serial killer Jeremy Skibitsky in 2022. Until yesterday, she was unidentified, known only as Buffalo Woman, but was believed to be one of the four murdered First Nations women. Skibitsky was sentenced to life in prison last year. The Manitoba government has promised Ashley's family that there will be a search of the city-run landfill where her remains are believed to be.
I can tell you that from the time of Mr. Skibicki's initial arrest on May 17th, 2022, Until as recently as this week, we have never stopped in our efforts to identify Buffalo Woman. On December 17, 2024, homicide detectives conducted a post-conviction interview with Mr. Skibicki at a maximum security facility where he is serving his sentences. During this interview, new information was provided to investigators that established that the remains of Buffalo Woman, as she was known at the time of this interview, were taken to the Brady landfill in March of 2022.
I want to say to Ashley's parents, to her mom and dad, who I had a chance to speak with briefly yesterday, I promise you that we are going to search the Brady landfill for your daughter.
Well, 5 candidates have been confirmed for the race to become Member of Parliament under the Lethbridge riding. Incumbent Conservative Rachel Thomas will attempt to win her 4th straight term, but another local candidate who works as a business broker says she is running to battle government overreach and overtaxation and to provide Canadians with a voice. BCN's Landon Hickok sat down with Clara Peterlow, who is running in Lethbridge for the People's Party of Canada.
So what was the decision that you made that you would enter politics? What do you bring to the table?
Yeah, that's a big question. It was certainly not something that I had ever aspired to do. Going into politics, I always thought politics was a joke, I'll be honest. I didn't want to participate in politics. I was just, like a lot of people feel, like my voice doesn't matter. What's one vote going to do? What impact can I even really have? You know, there's really just only a permanent government in Canada, like left, right, center, it doesn't even matter. It's just the same outcome every time, which I just didn't want anything to do with it. And I think a lot of people probably feel that way, and that it's an untruth. You know, your vote does matter. You do have a voice, and it's important to act out your right as a citizen to vote, because if everybody who didn't vote voted, we would have a very different political climate, a very different political distribution, if you will. So get out there and vote. But no, the real reason why is honestly, like I've spent years, you know, praying. I pray. I'm an active Christian, and I pray every day, you know, for like the drug epidemic, for God to come and help the drug epidemic so that people could get healthy again, you know, to help the poor, to put food on people's tables, you know. And so after doing that, like for asking God to come and fix all these problems, you know, it's really just come to my full understanding that the way God works is that God works through us.
How important in your perspective is God important in federal politics?
Well, that's a really great question. I mean, I think, you know, Leon Fontaine said, in every area, go greater.
You know.
And I think in federal politics, you know, it would be, my goal would be to bring Jesus mapped it all out. It was very simple what Jesus said. He said to, you know, feed the hungry, clothe the naked, visit the people in jail, help people who are sick, you know, house the homeless. Like those are just basic fundamental human needs. And I believe that in the federal government, we could help to get Canada out of poverty. Yeah.
You can watch the full interview on our Bridge City News YouTube page. Alberta is inviting its residents to participate in an online survey to help inform the implementation of steps the province is taking to strengthen food safety in licensed childcare facilities. This is in response to an E. coli outbreak that hit Calgary childcare facilities in the fall of 2023. The province responded by establishing an external review panel, and a final report was published in the summer of 2024. The report outlined 12 main recommendations and 27 sub-recommendations. If implemented, some recommendations may also affect the broader food service industry, including food establishments. Well, Lethbridge's Chief of Police, Shaheen Madizadeh, will have to undergo a misconduct hearing next month. It stems from a 2022 complaint that alleges the chief violated a public health order relating to cohorts during the COVID-19 pandemic by taking a civilian member out to lunch and that he denied culpability when confronted by the complainant, and that he brought discredit to the Lethbridge Police Service by participating in a news conference about holding LPS employees accountable for violating public health orders when he wasn't following them himself. The original investigation identified 16 allegations, but 10 were either time barred under the Police Act or the complainant did not supply enough evidence. The 6 remaining allegations were dismissed as frivolous, vexatious, and lacking an evidentiary basis. However, after the complainant appealed to the Law Enforcement Review Board, the LERB directed the Lethbridge Police Commission to conduct a hearing on the 3 allegations that we mentioned. The hearing will be held in the Culver Room at Lethbridge City Hall, April 17th at 9:30 a.m. The expansion of the Lethbridge Wellness Shelter and Stabilization Unit continues to move forward. Robin James, CEO of the Lethbridge Housing Authority, says the shelter will expand from 90 to 200 beds in the new space. While the existing shelter will undergo renovations to become a programming space, James says the old shelter will also be used as an additional space in winter by adding mats if needed. That is your Forum Daily West report. I'm Jeanette Roche. Thanks so much for watching.